evening, everyone. Welcome to OCast, your island gateway to all things geek, and of course, to one of the top 20 geek podcasts of 2026. Sadly, can't find Doug. No idea how, but I'll quickly introduce the team. Kieran, what's happening with you?
Oh, not much. Just busy with fatherhood, and just coping, barely surviving.
Yeah.
Sleeping. Just
All right. And Kenny, what's happening with you?
Absolutely nothing. Just plodding along.
All right. And Hereward, what have you been up to? And how do you get someone like Doug onto a podcast like this?
I don't know. I was hoping you had him. I thought you reached out.
Well, I did reach out, but
Do you know? I went to the newly opened and refurbished British Red Cross the other day, and I was looking around and I found this puzzle box. And I've been playing with it a little bit, guys. But I just
wait.
Wait, hang on.
The box. You opened it. I came. Oh, now you must come with me.
Fantastic. And of course, tonight's very special guest, what more can we say? Doug Bradley, the man behind Pinhead. So with that, Hereward, you can kick things off for us.
Yeah, Doug, it's absolutely brilliant to have you here with us tonight, although it's probably afternoon for you over in the States. Or...
It is, yes. I'm just outside Pittsburgh, southwest Pennsylvania. Yes, it is just after 3:00 in the afternoon. Thank you for inviting me. I'm here purely romantically, really. When I get lots of invites to things, so I'm very picky, choosy. But I saw that you were based in the Outer Hebrides, and I immediately said yes.
Oh, thank you very much. I mean, it's an absolute delight to have you with us. For me, I'm 40 something now, 46 now, and I've been a fan of horror movies since I was way too young. And obviously, your face on the video cases, the VHS cases in the video shop, they were the ones I really wanted to watch when I was about 9 years old. And yeah, it was. It's just so wonderful to have you here. And obviously, when we found out you'd be coming on, I hastily was rereading. Look, I've got my old copy of the Hellbound Heart here,
Nice.
with a kind of sort of you on the cover.
I think it's recognizable.
I hope you got royalties for that cover, because that does look like the you pin.
No. Well, it does look like me. No, you don't get royalties for that kind of thing.
Sorry. But I'd like to sort of kick off. Obviously, the character of Pinhead, the lead Cenobite, because he wasn't originally called Pinhead, was he? He's always been lead Cenobite, or
well,
so like.
Well, sorry. The answer to that, as far as I'm concerned, is that he doesn't have a name. And I mean, you'll be aware, as you've just reread the Hellbound Heart, that none of the Cenobites have names. They're entirely anonymous. In the Hellbound Heart, the only one of the Cenobites who's distinguished in any way is the female Cenobite, as being described as female. And that was also true in the screenplay for Hellraiser. We still didn't have any names. And that was deliberate on Clive's part, to maintain them as anonymous creatures. The problem with that was for the special effects makeup crew when they were preparing the makeups during preparation for the film. So, I mean, I got credited as lead Cenobite, and I don't even remember now. Was Chatterer then just called the chattering Cenobite, probably, and the female Cenobite was the female Cenobite, and I don't remember what Butterball was credited as in Hellraiser, but it was a bit clumsy for the guys working on the makeups in Bob Keane's studio, Image Animation, during prep for the film. So they gave us nicknames: Pinhead, Chatterer, Butterball, and the female Cenobite was called Deep Throat, which is probably the reason why she continued to be credited as the female Cenobite. So they just gave us the names so that they could refer to us, as Bob or Harry or Fred or whatever. And so I assume that during prep for the film and then moving on to set, they were using those names, so everybody was used to hearing those names, so everybody was using those names. So right from the get-go, we were being called by those names. And is it as early as Hellbound that we start getting credited as Pinhead and Chatterer and so forth? I'm pretty certain it is. But certainly by then, I think in reviews and articles about Hellraiser, I tended to be referred to as the mysterious leader, or the leader of the mysterious demons known as Cenobites or whatever. But the name Pinhead was there very early on, just being used universally, and obviously it's stuck ever since. But in terms of the character himself, as far as I'm concerned, he has no name, and in his own mind, he has no name. It's entirely a blank space as far as he's concerned to consider ideas of identity, I think. And I've always said that if I was a strict method actor, we would have had a bit of a problem. Method actors who I don't do this, but particularly I think American actors often will only answer to their character name during a filming day. I was told that during the filming of Lincoln, Daniel Day-Lewis would only answer to Mr. President. To each their own. But so it's always struck me that we'd have a bit of a problem if I was going down that route myself, which I don't. As far as I'm concerned, as soon as the director says, cut, I'm not in character anymore. Because if they were asking Pinhead to come to set, I would have ignored them, because Pinhead doesn't exist. It's not his name. And if they said, could we have Doug on set? Of course I would have ignored them. And if they'd asked for the lead Cenobite to come to set, I would still have ignored them. So we wouldn't have got anywhere, I guess, Oi, you with the nails in your head, get over here now.
Obviously, you and Clive Barker you were in school together, is that right?
Yes, I mean, I went to Quarrybank High School. When I started, it was Quarrybank High School for Boys, grammar school in Liverpool. It very quickly became a co-educational comprehensive. It was Quarrybank High School for Boys, and the girls' grammar school, Calder High School, was directly next door. And down the road was Morrison Secondary Modern School, and the three schools were combined to become a comprehensive, but it was still a boys' grammar school when I joined. I would be in the third year, so it's 1969 or 1970, I would say. I got cast in the school play, and I was told to, report to rehearsals, which I did, and met my fellow cast members, which included this remarkable bloke called Clive Barker. So yes, started there. So it's what we're 50, 55, 50, 56 years since we met.
Did he? How did he sell the role of the lead Cenobite to you? You know, when he said, "I'm going to make a movie, I'm making Hellraiser." You know, how did he pitch it to you?
Well, I had by that time. I worked with Clive in doing theatre, independent theatre throughout the 1970s into the very early 1980s, when the theatre company broke up really of its own accord. So I had done a lot of work with Clive, and I'd had a front row seat to all of his creative work. In addition to the theatre work we were doing, and some juvenilia movie making, but also his writing and his art. September 1985, we were at a party. Actually, it was the 30th birthday party for a wonderful lady by the name of Jane Wildgoose, who had worked with us in the theatre company making costumes, whom Clive then handpicked to make the Cenobites costumes for Hellraiser. So she was having her 30th birthday party, which she had themed as a wake for the death of her youth. And I remember standing on her patio. This is in Crouch End in North London, and talking about this, that, and the other. And Clive said, "Oh, by the way, I'm trying to put together a low-budget, independent British horror movie, and I think there's a part in there for you." And I believe I said, "Oh, cool, great." And we moved on to talk about other things. I wouldn't have needed any selling, to be quite honest. All I would need was for Clive to say, I'm doing this and I want you to be in it. So my answer would within reason and the law, have always been yes, without asking too many other questions. And I think by that time I'd already read The Hellbound Heart anyway. So if I knew that he was talking about that, I knew that he was planning a movie based on The Hellbound Heart. So yeah, that was September 85, and a year later we were at Cricklewood with the cameras rolling.
Nice.
When you were making the film, obviously you say it's an independent, not terribly low budget, but it was an independent British horror, and so different to any of the other British horror movies being made at that time. Did you realize when you were shooting it that you were onto something special?
I knew that we were doing something good. I knew that we were doing something interesting. I knew that with Clive at the helm, it would be visually arresting. I recognized, I think, in a lot of ways, a lot of the more serious elements of Hellraiser. I think it's a deceptive film brilliantly deceptive, because on the face of it, it behaves and it operates basically like a slasher movie. And I've always said that if you imagine a universe in which the Cenobites and the Lament configuration don't exist, you've never seen them, but there is this film called Hellraiser, the basic story of Hellraiser, of Julia and Larry, and Julia's infidelity with Larry's brother Frank dying in the house. You need to find another reason for him to die. Not difficult. The mattress being delivered, the blood in the floorboards, which brings Frank back to life, and the skinned man and Julia going to the bars and bringing back the victims and beating their brains out with a hammer and feeding their blood to her lover, and Kirsty's story, and then Frank in Larry's skin, and again you need to find a different denouement and a different way for Kirsty to save the day. But you can do all that. That story is intact. It's maybe a slightly dull but serviceable slasher film, with the central element of it being still unusual in being a love affair between a skinned man and a woman. And again, I think an element of genius in Hellraiser is that I think most directors at the time might have put a skinned man on screen as a jump scare.
Yeah.
And you might not have seen him again. Clive slows it down. Here's a skinned man who smokes cigarettes and drinks red wine, which is not how skinned men are supposed to behave, and is deeply in love with Julia. So to that extent, I think the bedrock of the film, which is that powerful story, is not out of place with movies of the late 80s. Clive then takes this little grain of pure Gothic horror and just drops it in the middle of all of that, and the movie explodes into somewhere else entirely. The Cenobites are a unique creation, and I think only someone with Clive's imagination could have produced that. They are timeless, I think. They're one of the reasons why the movie hasn't really aged all that much. I've always said you could show images of the Cenobites to a 14th century monk, and they'd know exactly what they were looking at. So I think to some extent we had slaved away at the theatre work, as I say, over 10 years. And although by the end of it, when we would be coming up to the Edinburgh Festival, we performed The History of the Devil in about 1980-81, where I was playing the devil, and came back the following year with Frankenstein in Love. And we were very successful up in Edinburgh, but generally when we came down from Liverpool to London, we assumed, we would present ourselves and London would fall at our feet and hail us as geniuses. And by and large, London, glanced at us and coughed and crossed the street and ignored us. And I think to some extent we'd got used to that. And I had this conversation during a photo op a year or so ago at a convention. It was all the Cenobites, and Ashley was there, Ashley Lawrence, and Clive. And I was sitting on a chair next to Clive as people were coming in and out to have their photograph taken with all of us. And there were a lot of people. They just kept on coming. And at some point I leant across and said to Clive, "What the fuck did you do?" And Clive said, I have no idea, but if I did, I wouldn't have done it." and he said to me, did you in all honesty, did you see any of this coming? And I said, absolutely not. I thought we might make a bit of a splash, and I thought we might get talked about for, he said, belatedly silencing his phone. We might get talked about a bit for a month or two, and then we'd probably disappear. And Clive said, "Huh, well, you were more optimistic than I was." So no, is the answer. Really didn't see it coming. You can't think in those terms anyway. You're just in down in the trenches getting the job done, and it would be. I think it's always a bad sign if people start, anticipating what something might be. It is true to say that halfway through, while we were still shooting Hellraiser, word was already coming down that New World were getting very excited by what they were seeing when the rushes were going back to LA, and that they had already said at that point, "We want a sequel."
Right.
So that talk was always around, but that's it's kind of like when you do a fringe theatre production, and someone at some point will always say, that somebody from such and such a production company is coming to see it, and we may get a West End transfer. It never happens. So hearing that kind of talk, I would probably have ignored it, but we were back very quickly. New World did exactly what they said they wanted to do. So we shot Hellraiser towards the end of 86, came out in 87, 88. We were at Pinewood making Hellbound.
I got a nice Hellbound story. So my wife is, I will say, she's not a fan of the Hellraiser films. She has endured the first one a couple of times, and I was like, "Oh, come on, let's watch the second one." You'd never seen the second one. We put it on, and she lasted all of 90 seconds. I don't know if that's a record, but it was.
That's probably only the recap of Hellraiser at the beginning, is it?
I mean, it was the point where your character is it General, what was he called, Bradley? Is that right?
Elliot Spencer.
Elliot Spencer. Sorry,
no,
he's the
the human version, the human being who became right. Elliot Spencer.
Yeah, he opens up the box, and then he's just like bummed by meat hooks straight away, and that was it. And my wife was just like, "What the fuck?" Absolutely no. Like, she was just like, "Oh my god, what is this? What is this?" And she like walked out the room. And I was like, "Wow, that was probably the quickest she's walked out of something." But so you played you played Pinhead like 8 times, I believe. Is that right?
Yes, 8 movies. Yes.
Of all of them, what's your favourite entry in the series? I mean,
when you say entry, you mean just my favourite of the films?
Your favourite of the Hellraiser films?
The first one.
And why? The first one.
Because it's the best.
Because that's true.
Well, I just think it is. I think in terms of it. I mean, I'm not running down the other films, which have their own qualities to a greater or lesser extent. I think it has the that bedrock of story that I was talking about, I think that's so prominent in Hellraiser, and it's what makes the film work. You know, as intriguing as the Cenobites are, I believe we're on screen for less than 10 minutes out of the duration of the film. We leave a lasting impression, certainly, but we are not what carries the film. And it's obviously it's partly sentimental reasons, because it's where we started, and it was my first movie, so there's that. And obviously seeing Clive now on a grown up movie set, directing, was thrilling and exciting and quite moving, to be honest, to see that as well. And to feel that we'd moved to this position was genuinely exciting. So I can't, and it's a thing that New World did that I can't imagine would happen now. Which is, Clive goes to LA. I believe he and his producer Chris Figg had a deal in place with Virgin initially, which would have made it properly a British horror movie. I bridle a bit at the description of it as a British horror movie, because while it's true to say that probably 95% of the talent that put the movie on the screen was British, 100% of the money that put the movie on the screen was American, and therefore 100% of the profits was American. And I think New World certainly had no doubt in their minds that this was, their movie and therefore an American movie. But when that deal with Virgin fell through, I believe just because they felt that it didn't quite fit with their family entertainment image, Clive and Chris went out to LA to pitch the film. And although Clive had, I think I'm right in saying that the Books of Blood had been published at that point, and he'd written a couple of screenplays, one out of one of his own stories, Rawhead Rex, and Underworld was the other one. In terms of the movie world in LA, he was a completely unknown quantity. And I think I'm right in saying that it was Chris and Clive's first pitch was to go to New World and pitch the movie, and they bit immediately and basically said, here's the check, and yes, you can direct it. That's the bit that I don't think would happen now. I don't think that people would take the chance on Clive directing it, and the movie would not be anything like as successful without Clive directing it, for all kinds of reasons. And also the meeting of minds between Clive and Robin Vidgen, the DP, director of photography, who deserves a huge amount of credit for the success of Hellraiser, I think, because Clive really did not know his arse from his elbow when it came, to cameras and lenses and all of that. And if Clive had been unlucky and he'd got a job's worth DP, he might easily have seen Clive coming and thought, great, I can put my feet up because this guy has no idea what he's doing, so I can make life easy for myself and run rings around him. Now, Clive, being Clive, could tell Robin not how to make it look the way he wanted to look, but he could tell him what he wanted it to look like. And again, Clive being Clive, he would reference paintings or, other references to what he wanted. And I can remember being on set and hearing these conversations going backwards and forwards between Clive and Robin saying, well, we can do that and I can do that. But if we do that, then we have to do this in terms of the lighting and this in terms of the setups and the shots, and that's going to take time. And if you do all of that, you're maybe going to give yourself trouble later in the day because you've got another big scene. You know, those conversations were going on. But Robin was prepared to listen to what Clive wanted and do what he needed to do technically to match Clive's vision. And then there was a point, I remember the conversations changing because it's obvious that Robin had taken Clive on one side and said, you know, I need to teach you how to do this. So this is a 35mm lens, and this is a 50, and this is what these lights do, and this is what these lights do. Because suddenly now I'm hearing, you know, Clive saying, Robin, can we put a millimeter on this, and what can we? And I remember hearing Robin saying, "Oh, Jesus Christ, why did I tell this guy how to do this? Now he not only knows what he wants it to look like, he knows how to make it happen." But Robin deserves huge credit, and the casting is perfect. And Bob Keene's image animation crew were wonderful and were exactly the right people for the job at the right time. Jane Wildgoose's costumes for the Cenobites, again, it's another little stroke of genius on Clive's part. She was her own head of department. The Cenobites' costumes were their own department. They weren't part of the overall wardrobe department. And that she and her assistant, they worked exclusively on the Cenobites costumes, which were magnificent constructions, wonderful creations. And you bring all these things together, and it just, you know, you never really know with movies, because the process is that basically, you know, a bunch of strangers turn up on Monday morning and start trying to make sense of making a film. And you kind of hope that everybody is going to get on with each other, and, you know, and it's not always the case, but it was emphatically the case with Hellraiser. And then you layer on top of that Chris Young's score, which again lifts the film onto a whole other level. It's a brilliant score. I do think the score of Hellbound is even better than the score of Hellraiser, but for all those reasons, Hellraiser is number one for me.
That's a brilliant response. Thank you. I mean, we have a question from someone that I'm going to ask in just a second. I know Cal's wanting me to ask it, but you've just said something that really helps me springboard into my last question. Because, you know, you were saying sometimes you get stuff and it all just comes together and it makes it work. Now, another movie that you worked on with Clive Barker, which for me was such an important movie in my youth. I even have my making of, very well thumbed, very old making of Nightbreed. I'm a huge fan of Nightbreed. Even the very, very cut version that ended up on the in my video shop when I was a lad. I mean, it's generally considered a bit of a commercial and critical failure, a bit of a bomb in that sense. It's built up a massive cult following over the years. Now, you were a part of it. You were Dirk Lylesberg, weren't you? You were the kind of
yes.
priest.
I don't know where the Dirk came from. He wasn't. Anyway, I only knew him as Lylesberg, but by the by.
What do you think went wrong with Nightbreed? What happened there?
was it's a hugely ambitious film. The sets were amazing. I mean, the sets were gobsmacking. It's movie magic moment, or it certainly was at Pinewood, to walk out and particularly the ones with the set with the rope walkways. I just remember standing slack-jawed, staring at all of this. And the Baphomet was so big. I mean, it was extraordinary. Of course, it's not really a horror film. It takes a theme I've already mentioned from Hellraiser and writes it large here. It's again a love story between a girl and a dead guy, which is kind of at the heart of Hellraiser as well, because Clive is a sick man. I don't mean that. You have to be very careful these days. The internet will be off and running. Doug Bradley says Clive Barker's sick. He I don't think he'd disagree with me, but what went wrong? There was a day when we came into work, and everybody was saying, "Have you heard what's happened? Have you heard what's happened?" And I hadn't. What had happened was that Chris Figg, who I've mentioned already, who produced Hellraiser and Hellbound and Nightbreed, working with Clive, and they were setting up a company called Film Futures, and they were going to have their own office at Pinewood, and were planning a slate of movies to shoot in the UK. I don't know the ins and outs, so I can't talk to detail of them, but something to do with figures in budgets and promises in budgets. Chris had been sacked, and it's a dramatic moment, and everybody kind of was, what? Well, what happens now? Well, we moved on. Clive stayed, but that was my first experience of having what is referred to as having finance on set. And that means that effectively the director is now not calling the shots. So a director may set up a scene and go for a take, and might say at the end of the take, that was great, keep it, print it, let's go again, for any number of reasons, but basically feels that or maybe you've got to the third take and the director says, yes, that's good, print it, let's keep that one, I want to go again, I just want to. Now, if that happens, you are likely in that instance to hear finance pipe up and say, you just asked for that take to be printed. You said that take was fine. And the director has to say, yes. And then finance can say, then move on. So that gets taken out of the director's hands to that extent. And it's a less than ideal creative atmosphere in which to work, because you're always left with that feeling, well, what did Clive want to change? What did he want to do differently? Well, now we'll never know. What happened after that, I don't know detail on, because it happened in Los Angeles. But to summarize it, it was Dickie, who had edited Hellraiser and Hellbound and was working with Clive as his editor on Nightbreed as well, produced the director's cut. As I said, Nightbreed, I would equate more to it's the word Clive would use is fantastique, and I would equate it more to something like Fellini's Satyricon than a 1980s horror film. And as soon as I saw that label, I have seen the future of horror, and his name is Clive Barker, Stephen King. Fantastic as that was, you can't buy that. Bang, put it on the poster, you bet. But I saw it and I also thought, well, I know Clive, and if you're going to cubbyhole him as a horror director, he's going to be worming his way out of the back of that cubbyhole pretty soon, because you're not going to contain him like that. But Morgan Creek and who were line producing the film, and Fox, who were the overall producers, Clive was hot from the Hellraiser movies, and they wanted a horror film, and they were going to get a horror film come hell or high water. So they start restructuring the film to try to make it work like that. And they do it by moving David Cronenberg's character to the center of the story, where he doesn't belong. They try to make it a slasher film.
Yeah. They
try to move him to the heart of the story where he doesn't belong. Decker was originally, he was just an extraordinary kickstart to the whole plot. And moving him to the center of the film, I didn't think made much sense and didn't really work. Not a criticism of David, who I thought did a really good job in the film. There just isn't enough material to make that work, and Clive didn't write the character to make it work like that. And they cut the breed scenes to ribbons, so that a lot of those scenes simply don't make sense, because you've lost a lot of dialogue that explains what's going on. And of course, the basic theme of Nightbreed, I guess, is that the breed are not the monsters. The breed just want to be left alone, apart from the renegade members of the breed, but they want to, generally speaking, be left alone, to be weird, living under the cemetery and live their life as such. The monsters are the humans who won't let that happen, and who have to, drive them out and exterminate them, go to war against them. And so they were not content with the idea of the gentility of the breed. So additional footage was shot to kind of beef the breed up, try and make them more belligerent, more aggressive. So it was all of that process. I mean, when and as I say, Dickie turned in his director's cut, and when they started demanding all these changes, Dickie, as it was reported to me, basically said "fuck you" and said I'm done, I'm off the film, and went back to England. Clive decided to stay and firefight, and he looked terrible when he eventually came home. He was in LA for a long time, through all that process, battling to try to save his movie. And then from my own point of view, when I got a phone call, I was in London, got a phone call from LA from somebody I didn't know, basically said to me, we need to re-record all Lylesberg's lines. Now that's that's not uncommon. I'd done that with For All Pinheads lines at Delaney Studios in Soho for Hellraiser and Hellbound, and it's not uncommon anyway to have to go in. And it's not a reflection on performance. It's usually just that there's noise and the quality of the recording isn't great. I mean, sound recording obviously has moved along considerably in terms of what can be done now compared to what could be done in 1989 when we were shooting Nightbreed. And the phone call was basically telling me that wasn't going to be me. And I like to think it was nothing to do with my performance. I think they were basically saying, we would need you in the studio for a couple of hours to re-record your lines. Again, nowadays, you could put me in a studio in London and they could get on a Zoom call to direct what was going on, and you just send everything digitally from London to LA, and you couldn't do that in 1989. And I think what they were saying was, we're not about to fly you first class across the ocean and put you up in a nice hotel and pay you per diem and so forth. When we can get Bob up the road to come in and do 2 hours at studio rates, probably a couple of $100, So I lost my voice. I've already lost my face. Now I've lost my voice as well, and acquired a German accent. And I don't know where that came from. It was certain I didn't play Lylesburg with a German accent, and if it was ever an idea in Clive's head, he never mentioned it to me. It was never under discussion between the two of us. I think somebody fell out of bed and bumped their head and thought, Lylesburg, he's German. So it was an odd experience going to see the film when it was premiered in London, because, as I say, you've lost your face and you've lost your voice. Your performance has kind of been taken away from you. What I mean is, if you're wearing prosthetic makeup, your vocal performance becomes very important to you in terms of assessing your performance. And I in many ways, I didn't recognize the film that I was seeing from the film that I knew we had made at Pinewood. And I think that's the reason why it commercially and critically fell afoul. Now, thank God we've had the Cabal cut. Of course, Nightbreed was again based on Clive's novel Cabal, and anyone who's read Cabal, Nightbreed, as we shot it at Pinewood, was a very, very faithful and page for page faithful adaptation of Cabal, which is not what Nightbreed is. But then somebody, the question I kept getting asked was, will there be a director's cut of Nightbreed? From very early on, I was being asked that, and and that, again, way above my pay grade to have any idea about that. And I just kept saying, I doubt it. I doubt it. And as time went by, I said, by now, I think if it was going to happen, it would have happened. And unless somebody, in a basement of Morgan Creek or Fox trips over a can of film and, says, what's that? What's this? Nightbreed, the director's cut, then it's probably not going to happen. And I believe it was sitting all this time on a shelf in Clive's office studio, behind a pile of books, was a work print, not the director's cut, but a work print from Pinewood, which became the basis of the restored Cabal cut, which had my original vocal on it, and then there was some bits that were missing, so they had to use what was filmed. But I was able to go into a studio and re-record my lines, not in a German accent.
It's really fascinating hearing you talk about that. I mean, I remember watching it. I think I was 10 or 11 when I first saw it, and I remember thinking the plot's all over the place. You know, the structure. Even back then, I was like, but I loved the creature design. I loved the designs of Midian. I still do to this day. And I can't remember where I read it. I read somewhere that someone once said that it was intended, or it should have been, like an adult Star Wars. And if they treated it as that, like a kind of a fantasy film, you know, with this.
Well, that's what it was.
monsters.
That's, as I say,
Yeah.
the word Clive would have used to describe it was fantastique, not horror.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, that there are horrific elements in it, and there are science fiction elements in it, and it's also it's kind of an atavistic horror. It's mythological horror. It borrows pagan mythology in Baphomet. So there's still a lot of mix in there, you know, and Clive taking out his hatred of psychoanalysts as well.
I won't tell you what I do for a day job then.
I don't have a problem with psycho. But, no.
We've got to ask a
I
question.
think Clive always feared that they might try to explain him away.
Oh no! Yeah, well, an analyst would do that. I'm a psychotherapist. We don't tend to do that. We just explore. So we have a question from one of our followers, Joanna. She says that she's, I think, like me, was from a generation that went straight from the Janet and John books to Fontana horror, and then Clive Barker, and Stephen King. I vividly remember sitting in my English class when I was about 12 years old and reading this, because we were allowed to bring our own books in and read them, and
wow,
very, very naughty. But yeah, she wants to know.
I grew up on Janet and John. Yes.
She wants to know if you had an
interest. Everyone in America is saying, "What? Janet and John?" I think there was an equivalent here. I think it was Dick and somebody else. I can't remember who. Anyway, that's by the by. Look, said Janet.
Joanna's wanting to know: did you have an interest in horror, in the horror genre, before sort of Hellraiser and things like that?
Yes.
Or did it develop as a result?
No, I did. As a boy, I scared very easy, and I got scared by things a lot. People of my generation will remember very clearly. The BBC used to do their classic serial Sunday tea time slot, and they did Jane Eyre, and the sequences of the Red Room, and also particularly when Miss Havisham is going crazy and she's careering round Rochester's house with the candlesticks and setting things on fire. I think my entire generation remembers that very clearly, as being very, very deeply scared by it. And actually, if you go back to Charlotte Bronte's novel, when Mrs. Rochester visits Jane in the middle of the night, immediately prior to her wedding to Rochester, Jane, of course, completely unaware that Rochester is in fact already married, Jane wakes up and Mrs. Rochester is peering over her as she's lying in bed, and Charlotte Bronte specifically describes her as looking like a vampire. So she in her writing was very clearly aligning what she was doing with horror tradition. I remember that the Pathfinder series, which I can't remember any detail of, but Pathfinders to Venus and Pathfinders to Mars, I think, probably again BBC series I remember being terrified by. Something else that I can't remember in any detail, but involved black footprints across a garden, terrified me stupid. And it would be a week of sleeping with the lights on. I always went and sat on my mother's knee, and she would suggest that we turn it off, and I would always say, no, don't turn it off. As long as I was on her knee, I was safe, but I wanted to keep watching. I was obsessed with ghosts, an interest that has never gone away, but for some reason or another, I've never seen one, but for some reason or another, they absolutely gripped me as a boy and terrified me at the same time. And I think the first time a movie scared me was watching The Innocents on, it would be on the BBC, probably shortly after it came out. And I think it's either 61 or 62 release, so it would be maybe a year after that. And I've seen it again subsequently. I saw it again as a grown-up and was delighted to realize that I think it's a great movie. I do recommend it heartily to anyone and everyone. But that's it. I mean, it's based on Henry James's Turn of the Screw, so it is a ghost story, and really, really scared me. Grown-up horror, Granada Television, God bless it, northwest of England. Monday night after news at 10, so 10:30 or 10:35, probably after the local news and the weather. They started a series called Appointment with Fear, and I'd be a teenager by this point. I can't place exactly where that sits, but I'd be a teenager but by this time, and basically they were screening the entire Hammer back catalogue on Appointment with Fear. So that was really my ground floor to the horror genre, courtesy of Messrs. Lee and Cushing in particular, and Peter Cushing is my god among genre actors. So that sparked the interest, and then I guess from there I would have moved on to discovering Universal and onwards and onwards. So yes, very much so. And obviously being
Fantastic.
in Clive's orbit for 10 years and more prior to Hellraiser, I mean, we would go and see every new horror movie as it came out, and then it would be analyzed and discussed in detail afterwards.
And dismissed as not as good as Hellraiser, probably.
Well, Hellraiser was only a distant dream at that point. And then also, I do remember a book on my dad's bookshelf, being intrigued by the title and easing it off the shelf and starting to read some of the contents in a very wide-eyed way, and started a love affair that has never stopped. And that title that drew my attention was Tales of Mystery and Imagination. by the master of horror fiction, Edgar Allan Poe.
Brilliant. Kieran has a question that's come from one of our listeners. Go for it, Kieran.
All right, so there's two of them. So I'll answer this first one, because it's the probably quicker one because it's essentially a one answer question. It's from our very own editor, and is what would Pinhead say if he was a Scouser?
Has he been watching Your Mum's House with Christina P?
Yes, I think she was.
Yes, right. Well, that came up there. I ended up doing Pinhead in a Scouse voice, but she was just asking me to do Pinhead's lines in a Scouse voice. Yeah, I'll tear your fucking soul apart, lad. If you're not careful, I will. Not messing about here. You're definitely be fucking legendary, man. Even in hell. And can we, for God's sake, sack Arnie Slot and get a new manager? But that's a whole other discussion.
So this next question is, how did the VMA appearance in 1992 come about? Was it purely part of the promotional tour for Hellraiser 3, or was there more to it?
So this is the MTV Video Awards, I guess we're talking about. It's entirely the latter. So I was in LA to help promote the movie coming out, and Miramax hit on the idea that they would like to do a number of publicity appearances in makeup and costume, which I was very resistant to, just because it's a pain in the arse. And I can't do anything really. I can't, I can't just give interviews and, be a regular bloke when, with the makeup and costume on. So those parameters were drawn, and they agreed to pay me for the appearances that involved makeup and costume, which helped sweeten the pill. And we did a whole bunch of things. I unveiled a statue of Pinhead in the Hollywood Wax Museum. They flew Clive and I out to New York, and we presented a box at Planet Hollywood. And E! Entertainment cameras were there, and they got us. They asked, would we go walkabout? So we left Planet Hollywood, and we went out onto whatever, 34th Street, I don't remember, whatever it was, and started walking down the street. And Clive said to me, don't look now, but there's about 100 people following you. and there was. And one guy asked me would I hold his baby? Like I'm running for president. And Clive said, when we get to Fifth Avenue, I think you should make a left and keep going into Central Park and deliver the new Sermon on the Mount. Pinhead's version of the Sermon on the Mount. So it was all of these things, and I went on the Arsenio Hall show, and I think the Tonight Show, or that may have been for Bloodline, but I went on Arsenio Hall, and I remember Clive calling me in the car on the way back from the studio. He said, what the fuck have we done? He said, because it was the old gag at the, it was they were working on somebody's costume, and they kept asking for a pin, and I would hand a pin, and then the camera would come back and reveal me standing there. And he said, the really scary thing is that you sold it. You made it work. and that may be the toughest acting assignment you've ever had. So then they came up with it with doing the music award appearances, and that was a repeating thing that they did every year with David Spade, where they would have celebrities. They would film separately sections with celebrities trying to get into the music awards, but their names are not on the list, so they can't get in. And they would film those, and then they'd screen them during the awards ceremony. And so that year, the celebrities who were unsuccessfully trying to get into the VMA awards were Roseanne, Andrew Dice Clay, some drummer from a rock band called Ringo Starr, and Pinhead. So I was UCLA, I think, was where we were filming it, and I arrived. We'd already put the makeup and costume on, so I roll up in the limo and get out, and the PR girl says, welcome. We're so excited to have you here, and we just bring you down here and bring you into inside the auditorium. Elton John and Eric Clapton are rehearsing at the moment. Okay. Oh, and Ringo's here. Now, I'm a 7-year-old in Liverpool when I first hear "Love Me Do" on the radio, and what the Beatles meant to me, still mean to me, would be another 3 hours of discussion. So my legs went completely to jelly. And they said, he's just around the corner here. We'll bring you in and introduce you to him. And I came around the corner, and Ringo had his back to me. He was wearing a wonderful kind of turban thing on his head, talking to a couple of guys, and I can see them going pointing to me. And Ringo turned round, and it is one of the moments of my life. He turned round, looked at me, and he went, "Hey, it's Pinhead." And so that was my introduction to Ringo, and I think I babbled like an idiot. I've said often to fans who apologize and say, I'm sorry, I'm a little overcome. I've instanced that and said, please don't worry, because I don't want to know the shit that I babbled at Ringo at that point.
Whilst dressed as Pinhead as well. That's brilliant. I love the idea of kind of
Pinhead fanboying.
So someone needs to draw that.
It was probably, I'm from Liverpool too, and that kind of. I don't. He was very gracious, and we had our photograph taken together, and it was on the front page of the Hollywood Reporter the following day. So that was cool.
That's magnificent. Doug, we have an idea to play a game. I hope you're game for it. Obviously, you've been talking about how when your face is all covered up with prosthetics, it's how important your voice is. And obviously, Pinhead, I think a huge part of how scary he is his voice and how powerful and intimidating it is. So we were wondering if you can make some of the most innocent statements sound very, very sinister with your Pinhead voice. Are you game?
Sure.
Okay, the first one, nauseating one in every kitchen in the world. Live, laugh, love.
Oh. live, laugh, love.
Excellent. Okay. Next one is Kieran came up with this one. It's a Bob Ross one. We don't make mistakes.
Sorry,
Just
say again?
happy little accidents. We don't make mistakes. Just happy little accidents.
You're welcome.
Hold on a moment. My say hello, Bob. Hi. He's complete with his little paintbrush.
That's brilliant.
and his palette. My wife's an artist, and she grew up watching Bob Ross. She still watches him now. Extraordinary ability.
Will she forgive you for this? Will she forgive you for this?
Of course, yes. We don't make accidents. No, what's the thing again?
We don't make mistakes.
Mistakes. We don't make mistakes. There are only happy accidents. That's it. I think. We don't make mistakes. There are only happy accidents.
Okay. One more. Now, this one is a little bit complicated. Are you ready for this? It's my, Mrs. Hasselblasset, your chrysanthemums are simply divine this year.
What the fuck is that from? Who's Mrs. Hasselblasset?
You don't know. It came to me. It seemed like a good old lady name.
You just made this up?
Yeah. Sorry.
I thought it was. It sounds like a hyacinth bouquet line.
Oh,
yeah,
no,
if you need a bit of context, right? So the Cenobites have gone to a nice open garden thing in Worcestershire or something. It's a lovely summer's day.
Flower show, maybe.
Yeah, Mrs. Hasselblasset is showing them her chrysanthemums, and they're very, very good. And action.
So I'm having to write this down. My Mrs. Hasselblasset, your chrysanthemums or delphiniums?
Yeah. Oh, delphiniums are even better, actually. Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
You think? Okay.
Yes.
Your delphiniums are
simply divine this year.
My sister's just come up with one as well.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Why did I say yes to this? My, Mrs. Hasselblasset, your delphiniums are simply divine this year. Your delphiniums will be legendary, even in hell.
It's like saying, "Oh, we have a well-known and famous actor on here. Make him do funny voices."
Yes, why not?
That is brilliant. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, Doug. It's been an absolute delight.
Yeah. There was one request we had. If you're okay with us, it'd be great for a little promo for our convention, and it's just, please come to Ocon. We have such sights to show you. Would you be willing to do that for us?
And it's Ocon, right?
Ocon, yeah.
Yes. You should come to Ocon. We have such sights to show you.
Fantastic.
Brilliant.
Heather is going to love that.
Mm-hmm.
I see another question there as well about Cradle of Filth.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
If you have the time.
It came about very simply. I already knew Danny slightly. I got a phone call from the band's manager. It just said, the boys are in the studio. This was Midian, their album, and Danny was wondering if you would contribute some spoken word to it. We don't have very much money, and she wasn't joking about not having very much money, but I said yes to it just because I liked Danny. I am not a fan of heavy metal or death metal. Danny's fully aware of this, but I admire him hugely. I think he's a really good writer, and I love the way he's created and the whole image around Cradle, and kept it so successfully going for so long. They're playing here in a couple of nights' time, and I think we might try and get along. I have seen them live before. He is an extraordinary performer. I mean, he's tiny. I don't know how he produces those voices or where from. He's an amazing performer and a great showman. And of course, I've done 5 albums with them now. I said to Danny that I thought it was time they became Doug Bradley and Cradle of Filth, because they're effectively just my backing band now. But it's always been a pleasure to work with Danny. We had him as a guest on the podcast that Steph and I did for a short while, Down to Hell, and he's very, very funny. He's very funny. I love the guy. Don't listen to Cradle of Filth for pleasure and entertainment. I will say that, though. I'm a big disappointment to my fans as not being a big heavy metal fan. I redeem myself as being a major Ghost fan, but
Okay, I think we can wrap it up there, guys. I mean, what more can we say to Doug? Just thank you so much for taking the time out. It's been fantastic. And the one final question we always ask, would you consider ever coming to Stornoway?
Yes, I mean, before we started recording, I was talking about my love of the Hebrides. I've been on. Does Sky count as the Hebrides?
Yep.
Probably not.
Yes.
Tyree. I've spent time on Tyree and Barra, but I've never been to Lewis. But absolutely, I would. Yes. I love the Hebrides. Absolutely love the Hebrides.
All we can see is please come in October. There's a little event that would gladly welcome you in.
Certainly.
Yeah. Yes, we
look,
might just make room for you.
It won't be this October because I'm pretty heavily booked up, but keep in touch with me. You never know.
Okay,
that would be wonderful.
There you go.
That would be wonderful. We would, and what more can we say? Just thank you very much. Thanks everyone for tuning in and the great questions, and we'll see you all very soon. Good night or good afternoon, wherever you are.
Bye, everyone.
Ta-da.